In this presentation, we are going to talk about futurist cuisine, kind of avant-garde cuisine, which emerged as a facet of a much larger artistic movement at the beginning of the 20th century. Futurism is really the most important Italian avant-garde art movement of the 20th century, and it celebrated as one of its most important principles both technology and urban modernity. Here are some key points of futurism as an aesthetic movement. Futurist artists were committed to anything that is new. They also were committed to the destruction or erasing older forms of culture, which you can understand if you are an avant-garde artist at the beginning of the 20th century in Italy. Italy is a country where by default tradition and antiquity is omnipresent, and it weighs very heavily on somebody who wants to explore and promote something that is new. So futurists that took this kind of militant position of opposition to anything that was ancient or traditional. Futurists also wished to demonstrate the beauty of modern life, of the machine, speed, violence, and change. They were somewhat kind of early PR men because they were very interested and eager to embrace popular media and new technologies to communicate ideas. So, for instance, they embraced a kind of antecedent to animation and cinema, chronophotography, which allowed the movement of an object to be shown across a sequence of frames. So, this idea of movement, but also of wanting to capture dynamism. They were fascinated with representing modern experience, and they wished to evoke all kinds of sensations, not just those visible to the eyes. Futurist art brings to mind the noise, heat, and even the smell of the metropolis. And futurism definitely began its transformation of Italian culture with the publication of its manifesto on the 20th of February 1909, a manifesto which was authored by the writer and artist Filippo Tommaso Marinetti. And if you think about what we just said, the propensity of futurists to embrace new forms of mass communication, then it makes sense that it appeared on the front page of a French daily, Le Figaro, which was then the largest circulation newspaper in France. So Marinetti certainly knew how to promote his ideas um, very efficiently. So the stunt signaled the movement's desire to employ modern popular means of communication to spread its ideology. And this is a picture of Marinetti himself, sort of displaying on his desk copies of his manifesto. Quoting from Filippo Marinetti and from his manifesto, this is a significant excerpt. We want to fight ferociously against the fanatical, unconscious, and snobbish religion of the past, which is nourished by the evil influence of museums. We rebel against the supine admiration of old canvases, old statues, and old objects, and against the enthusiasm for all that is worm eaten, dirty, and corroded by time. We believe that the common contempt for everything young, new, and palpitating with life is unjust and criminal. That about sums it all. And here is actually the front page of the newspaper itself, where you can see the manifesto on the lower left hand corner begins to be quoted. Now, Marinetti, of course, was not alone. His ideas drew the support of artists that you can actually admire at the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Artists such as Umberto Boccioni, Giacomo Balla, Gino Severini, and Carlo Carrà, who believed that they could be translated into a modern figurative art which explored the properties of space and movement. The movement initially was headquartered in Milan, but it really spread all over Italy quickly to Turin, Naples, and over the next years, Marinetti also vigorously and tirelessly promoted it abroad. And here are some of the examples of where you see, practically speaking, how the futurists create art that is supposed to be dynamic and modern. This is by Marinetti. This is another painting by Marinetti. This is Giacomo Balla. You can see figures sort of decomposing in space to create this idea of dynamism and movement. Another canvas by Giacomo Balla. This is a man riding a horse by Carlo Carrà. A famous statue again of a human body almost decomposing by under pressure of movement and dynamism. The statue is in New York City at MoMA on display. And then finally, some of the most interesting rendering by futurists are done through architectural drawing. The main architect associated with futurism was Antonio Sant'Elia, who, if you look at his drawings, they are absolutely stunning. They are very modern and beautiful, I might add. Although keep in mind that Sant'Elia himself died very young, and none of his drawings ever came to light in real life, but they are certainly beautiful to look at, and they are clearly, they give you an idea of the fascination of futurism, for modern life, and their love for the metropolis. This is a rendering that Sant'Elia did for the central train station in Milan. Skyscrapers with external elevators. He loved to put on display kind of movement along the side of high, tall buildings. And here is another futuristic drawing. Their enthusiasm for modernity and the machine-led futurists, unfortunately, to celebrate the arrival of World War One, and their fascination with war continued through the 20s, and actually sort of influencing the futurists to then embrace fascism, which made really futurism the only 20th century avant-garde movement to have embraced far-right policies. The futurists made paintings, as we have seen, sculpture. They also composed poetry, architecture. We have just seen some of Sant'Elia's drawings, and music, but they also tackled the culinary world. So they were really all encompassing. So they tackled the idea of cuisine. And again, in their obsession with modernity, you will see the kind of take they have on traditional Italian food and cuisine. In 1932, Marinetti published the Futurist Cookbook, a manifesto that railed against technologically antiquated kitchens, international style cuisine, and above all, pasta. So, whatever was sacred to Italians, the futurists wanted to dismantle. Pasta, particularly, is something that Marinetti found odious, and he wanted to help abolish it from the Italian diet, much like he had wanted to abolish museums and ancient art from the Italian landscape. So here is the cover page of the manifesto. It was only 5 lire. Of course, this is Marinetti guiding a chef in experimenting. Marinetti preferred his futurist meals to combine the radical use of color, shape, music, lighting, and ideas, leaving taste and nutrition off the list entirely. So food becomes really, in the hands of futurists, a performance piece. He argued that all substance should come from pills, freeing up food to be the raw material of art, preferably to be consumed while listening to the soothing hum of an airplane engine. His crazy oddball cuisine did debut in a futurist restaurant, the only restaurant actually, in 1929 in Turin, called La Taverna del Santo Palato, or Tavern of the Holy Palate. It was an event Marinetti considered on par with the discovery of America and the fall of Bastille, which is which was the beginning of the French Revolution. He hailed it as the first human way of eating is born. His cuisine was replicated at various futurist events across Europe, to the horror of many pasta lovers, and his 1932 cookbook has both delighted and mystified gastronomists really ever since. Here is actually a picture of the restaurant in Turin, the Holy Palate restaurant. This is a beautiful menu from the restaurant. Actually, you can see the beautiful drawings. This is a picture of a futurist banquet in Tunis. Marinetti, you can see him standing in the front wearing a tuxedo. In the manifesto, he proposed a complete rewriting of Italian food traditions, a new cuisine influenced by science and unencumbered by tradition. Marinetti wrote that the new cuisine turned to high speeds like the motor of a hydroplane will seem to be trembling traditionalists both mad and dangerous. And here are some illustrations of the kind of presentation. It's very well mapped. This is a dish called the proiettili autunnali, autumnal bullets, where you have little birds cooked in a sage sauce, and then you have little balls made of rice, which has been prepared and then baked, and also polenta little balls. So it's supposed to really create a very pleasing symmetrical presentation. This is, you can see his rendition of a cocktail. Again, look at the presentation. This is an overwhelming cup. This is a dish with sausages, with zigzag of spinach. These are actually pictures of some of the contemporary reenactments of or staging of futurist foods, which sometimes take place. There was one a few years back. There was a big retrospective of futurist art held at the Guggenheim Museum in New York, and they did actually organize a futurist dinner. This is a meat sculpture which was presented at the British Library. This was in Washington, D.C. A tactile dinner. You will see the description in the pages I've scanned for you. This is De Pero and Marinetti wearing futurist vests designed by De Pero, so they ventured into the realm of fashion. And here is an interesting picture because, of course, in spite of his many protestations, this picture shows Manifesti eating pasta at a famous restaurant in Milan called Biffi in 1930. So clearly he hadn't given up the habit himself.